Al Kadosh, Boker Or, Bava Batra Daf Gimel Amud Aleph 23A1. We were by where it says over here about the Orev. We got to the Mishnah, no? We're on the Mishnah on Kav Gimel Amud Aleph. Okay, so Mishnah says Marchikim, so 23A. Says a Mishnah, Marchikim et Shovach Mina'ir Hamishim Ama. You're going to distance the chicken coop from the city 50 amot. Velo ya'aseh adam shovach betoch shelo. And, right, a person cannot come and do a shovach, a chicken coop, inside of his field, right? Unless he's going to have 50 amot to every single side. Why? Because if not, then the pigeons, these things are going to go and they're going to damage all the different tivua which are in the fields. And Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, Bet arba kurim. We're talking about now bet arba kurim, which means you need a bet kur for every single side of the field, meaning like in every direction. Melo shegere yonah, which is basically what the yonah will fly in one time, right? The im lekacho. Now, if he's going to come and he's going to take that, he basically buys it from someone else with the karka. So afilu bet rova, even with a bet rova, hareu becheskato. So that's going to be a right. That's going to be the chazakah, which means that the second that a person purchases it, that's with the chazakah that he's able to use it in such a fashion. So that was a Mishnah. Says the Gemara, chamishim ama vetulo. Are you going to tell me that the yonim, right? These the pigeons, they only fly for 50 amot and not more? Because we said that you needed 50 amot lechol ruach, because that's how much that they're going to fly. That's the only thing that they fly. Or mini, we have a contradiction. Em porsin nishbin leyonim. You're not allowed to place a trap for yonim of efker, unless it's going to be a distance of the yishuv 30 ris. Now, this is 4 mil, right? So he says, so what are you telling me now? 50 amot. This is 4 mil. You know how much is 4 mil? So it's much more than 50 amot over here. So what's going on over here? Yeah? You're telling me that they only fly a distance of 50 amot. He's talking about a distance of how do you call it? Of 8,000 amot. Because every single ris, right, he's saying over here, right, is basically the 30 ris is 4 mil. And every mil is every single mil is alpay mama. Okay? Which one? 1 mil is 72 minutes, but that's distance, that's a time. But in distance, it's 2,000 amot. 1 mil is 2,000 amot, right? So it's just under a kilometer or just over a kilometer, according to the Chazon Ish. According to Grachna, it's 960, right? 960 meters, right under the kilometer, or just over a kilometer. So basically, the question is, what are you telling me now? The distance that's flying is going to be what? Is going to be only 50 amot, which is 25 meters. It's nothing. He says here it's 8,000 amot. There's a huge difference. So Amar Abaye says, Mesha chai tetuva. No, they fly. They fly tons. Ukresayu b'chamishim amot. But their stomachs will be filled after already 50 amot. Meaning, why do you have to distance it for 50 amot? Because that way, right, they cannot eat anymore. So therefore, you're going to have to make sure, right, that you have the 50 amot. So that way, they're not going to come and damage anymore because it's already full, right? So says the Gemara, he only flies 30 ris, which is again the 8,000 amot. But Tanya, we learned, right, in a braita of Yishuv, afilu 100 mil lo yifros, even for 100 mil. Yeah, so we're not talking about anymore, right? 100 mil, you know what that is? So he comes and he says, Rav Yosef comes and he says, B'Yishuv Kramim, right? We're talking about the right Yishuv of vineyards. V'Rav Amar B'Yishuv Shovachim, which means that if they're going to come, right, and they're going to have from one vineyard to another vineyard, or from one shovach to another shovach, then you're right. They could go even further, right? But here we're talking about that it's a kilu, that without that, it's just in the plain air. There, they're only going to go whether it's the shoshim ris, right, or the whichever one that it is. Okay, fine. So ask the Gemara, "V'tepukle mishum shovachin gufayim." Says, 1 second. Why don't we just what about forget about the birds? What about the shovachs himself? Right? Why? Because we should prohibit to come and start putting all these traps, because maybe they're going to come and trap the yonim, which belong to the person right beside him. Right? So he says, "Ibaitema didei, ibaitema de knane, ibaitema defker." 3 different answers. Either we're talking about it's his own, so therefore, even if it's his own, he's only going to catch his own pigeons, so there's no problem. Right? Number 2, right, of a goy, and number 3, they're efker. So there's no isur in any of these cases. Okay, fine. Then we said in the Mishnah, we're going back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that Yehuda comes and he says that you need a shetach of 4 kur. Okay, of all around. Again, obviously, because we're talking about that. If not, then they're going to come to your field and they're going to start damaging you. So we can't have that. So therefore, we have to distance a certain amount. So he says, "Amar Papa v'yitemar of Zvid zotomeret toanin lalokeach toanin leyoresh." It comes out from here that there's such a concept that we make a ta'ana for a purchaser and we make a ta'ana for a yoresh, which means if you purchase a field from your friend, or a person comes and he inherits from his father, and somebody else comes and they start, saying things, right? So it comes out that we are going to come and give the ta'ana for them. We don't need them to say anything. We become like their defendants, right? And we're going to do that because that's what's happening here. So says the Gemara, Yoresh Tanina. We already learned this by Yoresh. Why? Haba mishum Yerusha. There's a Gemara later on, Memalef Amud Aleph. If somebody comes because of a Yerusha, eno tzarich ta'ana. He doesn't need any ta'ana, right? To say how did it come to his hand. He got it. The betting said what? He's got what's it called? He's got Yerusha. That's it. You don't need anything else. So says the Gemara, lokeach itzlich aleh. So he says our Mishnah, right? We're talking about in such a case, right, where it's going to teach us to do with the lokeach. Meaning, you're right. The yoresh, we already learned it. We don't need it for yoresh. We need it for the lokeach. That's what we need it for. So says the Gemara, lokeach namit. But we also learned it by lokeach. Why? It says lakach hatzer uba zizin ugzustarot harezo bechaskata. What does that mean? If you're going to come and you're going to purchase, let's say, a field. Now it's got beams coming out, or gezusarot, or the big beams, right? They go into the Reshut beam, right? They go in the chazakah, which means betin come and they say, right, that he took it out kadin, and therefore, right, we're gonna give the ta'ana for you. So therefore, the question is, if he was taking out kadin, so that means he could still leave it there. He doesn't have to start, cutting it down, basically. So if we learned it also by Yoresh, and we learned it also by the right lokeach, so what's going on? So says the Gemara, tzricha. So you're right, we need it. Why? There it's talking about the Reshut Rabim. So the Emar, I'm going to say, he went into his own field. Meaning when he took out, right, these beams or whatever it is, he was still in his property. Inami, or the Reshut Rabim, they forgave him that he was able to do that. Yeah, so he comes and he says, right, as follows, right, aval hacha, but over here, lo, right, I'm not going to say such a thing. Yeah, fine. So basically, that's why we still need the chidush by the entire concept of the lokeach, because it's not the same thing. So he says, v'yashmin and hacha. Now, if you're also going to come and you're going to tell me that it's only going to speak about our case to do the shovach, the kivan the yachidhu, it's a yachid. So ema paise pusa, I would say that mistaber, that the seller came and he appeased them with money. Inami achule, or it was mochel. Aval rabim, but if it's a lot of people and it's going to come and it's going to damage them, man pais man shavik, who's going to let it? Remember that whenever we're dealing with the rabim, you need everybody in the rabim to agree. So therefore, who's going to come and they're going? Everyone's going to be mochel. Everyone. How does that work? Say Elmaleh would say it doesn't work. So tzricha, that's what we know in both cases. So that's why, even though we already learned it by the lokeach, and we learned it also by the yoresh, we needed it by the yoresh because of the lokeach. And he says that even the lokeach, we also needed it. Okay, fine. 2 dots on the bottom of the page. Yeah, areu becheskato. So the shofach, he's got a chazakah, and therefore he could keep the shovach there. Even though what's going to happen is that by having the shovach there, right, it might damage. So the Gemara asks, En chazaka nizikin. We already learned this yesterday and the day before yesterday. There's no such thing as a chazaka nizikin. I cannot come in and say, listen, I have a chazaka that I come every single day and I punch you out. So I'm going to come and I'm going to continue doing it. Why? But I have a chazaka. So there's no chazaka for nizikin. Nizikin, you cannot have a chazaka for doing nezik. It does not exist. So says the Gemara, Rav Mari comes and he says, Bekutra, which means this teaching, right, was, if you remember this, we learned this already also as well, was only to do with the Ashan, right? Why? Because here, when you have like this furnace, right, or this chimney that's making such a black, there's no chazakah. Or Rav Zid says it's a bet it's a washroom. Why? Because the restroom, it has such a bad stench that no. There it doesn't, but everything else, it does have a chazakah. So basically, it comes out that when this says that en chazakah l'nezikin, according to Rav Mari or according to Rav Zid, it's only in those cases, only in the case of bet or kutra. Other than that, there is a chazakah, right, that you are able to make for nezikin. Fine. Kav Gimel Mubet, 23b. Okay? Yeah, 23b. Yeah? Fine. Nipol. Okay, we're talking about now a gozal. How do you translate the gozal? Okay, so young dove. Yeah, so we're talking about now the young one. So gozal animtza betoch 50 amah. Yeah, you have a young dove which is found within 50 amot. Harehu shel bala shovach. So who does it belong to? To bala shovach. Why? Because I'm going to say that it's within the 50 amot. It belongs to him. Chutz me 50 amah. It's going to be outside of the harehu shel matzor. Whoever found it. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. Nimtza ben shne shovachot. What happens if it's in between both of them? So karov lezeh shelo, right? Karov lezeh shelo. Depends which one is closer to. Mechsal mechsa. If it's going to be biduk in between the both of them, so shnehem, right? So then what happens? It's going to be yachloku. It's going to be that they divide it between them. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Hanina. Says Rabbi Hanina. Rov vekarov holchim achar arov. When you have a case of rov and you have a case of karov, you go after rov, meaning rov has more power than karov. Rov is majority and karov is closeness, proximity. So therefore, what he's trying to say is that if you have a rov and then you have a karov, now remember the rov and the karov, each one is trying to enlighten us. Who does it belong to? Right? So he comes and he says, rov is stronger. The afal gav the ruba doraita, the kurva doraita, firuach rubadif. So he says, now, one second, both of them are doraita. Meaning the fact that we go after rov, that comes from the Torah, and the fact that we go after karov, that also comes from the Torah. But still, ruba is adif. Rov is better. Okay? Which one? The one of rov is acharei rabim leatot, which is basically in the Torah, when it's mentioned to do with, you go after the majority of the dayanim. When they have a judgment case, right, you go after the majority of the dayanim. So that's rov. We go after rov. That's what it says in the footnote. Acharei rabim leatot. Adin shel karov, they learn from egla rufa. From the closest city, he's the one. So therefore, karov comes from the Torah, and rov comes from the Torah. But even though they both come from the Torah, rov vekarov, rubadif. So now we're going to try to understand, right, different cases. Which one? So says the Gemara. Again, we just placed an assumption, or not an assumption, like a rule, which is basically rov v'karov, majority and proximity. You go after the rov. So says the Gemara, Mati Rabbi Zera comes and he says, 1 second. By Parashat Egla Rufa, it says, Vaya'ira krova lechalal. They were talking about karov. Remember the city which is closest to the Egla Rufa, to the deceased, to the one that was murdered. So therefore, they have to bring an Egla Rufa. Now he says, now, even though we're talking about that there's another city further away that it has the majority. So therefore, 1 second, here you have a stira of rov and karov, and we go after karov, not rov. One more time, right? One more time. I have a person that was killed, murdered on the path. Says the Torah, what do? You get the closest city, and the bedin of the closest city will come, and they have to bring an egla rufa. Says the Gemara, 1 second. The Bizera says, I don't understand what's going on. Why? Why are you going after the closest city? The closest city, maybe Be'emet, there was 200 people. Okay. But then there was a city which was further away, right? It was a bit further away, but you had 100,000 people. So therefore, why am I going to say that it was a 200 people in the small city, right? Maybe it's 100,000 in the big city. So you're right. It's a little bit further away. But that means you see that Rov ve Karov, you go after Karov, not after the Rov. So answers the Gemara, Bedeleka. You don't have any of the big cities around it. They're all equal. So therefore, since you don't have any big cities around it and they're all equal, you do not have Rov. So therefore, you go after Karov, right? And that's what you're doing. Yeah. So he says, Veleza bataruba da'alma. 1 second. But you have Rov of the world, right? If you have Rov of the world, go after Rov of the world. And it doesn't come from the city. What do I care about the proximity of the city? You have Rov of the world. Answers the Gemara, Beyoshevet Benearim. It's sitting between, right, mountains. So therefore, he comes and he says, right, it comes out that since it's like in between mountains, so therefore, it's not normal that people will come here. So therefore, I'm going to say that it's the closest city. That's what's coming out. Yeah. 1 minute. Yeah. So that is the what's it called? That is the answer of the Gemara until now. So the Gemara is going to ask, 1 second, how do you say that? He says, we learned in the Mishnah, Nipul and Nimtza b'toch 50 amah. When you have this young dove that you found within the 50 amot, Hareu shebala shovach, right? It belongs to bala shovach. Now he says, he says what? Even if you're going to tell me now that there's another shovach, which is outside of the 50 amot, but it's much bigger, right? It's come much bigger. So therefore, again, you have karov and rov. And what are you telling me that you're going after the rov? Here you're going after karov. Answers the Gemara, bedeleka. You don't have another one which is bigger. They're all the same. So says the Gemara, if so, let's see the Seifa. It says if it's outside of the 50 amah, it belongs to the person who found it. Now, if there's nobody else around, but so therefore for sure it came from there. Meaning, if there's no other type of a chicken coop, you know that it came from that one. So what does it mean? Well, if it's outside of the 50 amot, imagine it's 52 amot. There's no other chicken coops around, but it doesn't belong to him. Iowa, of course it belongs to him. So answers the Gemara. What are we dealing with? We're talking about such a small one that it can't even fly. It's only like like walking around. The Amma hops around. The Amma of Ukva Barchama, Kola Medade, meaning whenever you're going to come and they're going to be hopping around, they don't hop more than 50 amot. 50 amot is like the maximum. So therefore, the second that they found it outside of the 50 amot, so therefore that's a proof that it didn't come from this one, and therefore, right, the finder can actually keep this young dove. Okay. By Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and he asks the following question: Raglo achat betoch 50 amah veraglo achat chutz me50 amah. What happens if you have 1 foot in and 1 foot out? I know a lot of people that they are like that. They have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I said they're not 2 feet in. There's 1 feet out, 1 feet in. Right? So what's halacha? What happened? They threw him out of the Beit Midrash. They threw him out of the Beit Midrash. Yeah? What does that mean? Mamash, a guy, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Throw him out. No, you throw him out. Why? Right? So if you actually look at the footnote, the reason why is because, right? It's not because of that. He says, right, because the Mishnah said it, mechza al mechza. But rather because if the rabbis come and the rabbis gave a shiur, he's mizalzel in the shiur. And therefore it was like a zilzul. Right? That's one explanation. I always remember that the reason why is because you don't ask a question which is a theoretical question. A theoretical question. Meaning many times, I remember I had the Rabbi many times. So we said, Rabbi, what happens if this? So he says, when it happens, come back to me. What does that mean? Meaning that, don't ask a theoretical question. Ask a question. No, the Gemara is asking on different things, but it's not a theoretical what if. The Gemara is on cases. It's not inventing a case. The Gemara doesn't say, but we have another case here. This is what happened. Another case here. This is what happens. But now, so therefore we come and we're trying to find out what is the case which is the most comparable in order that, like a lawyer, right? Is this that one? It's not like this. It's like this. That, and then you try to come in case differences, right? But not here, right? That it's a theoretical concept. Theoretical concept they do not do. You understand? So he says Tashema. Let's see that. It says Nimtza ben shnei shovachot. We said if it's going to be between two different chicken coops, karov lazeh v'shelo, karov lazeh shelo. If it's closer to eat, what is it belongs to him? He says 1 second, but here it's mashma that even the one of them has more. Meaning, why are we coming when we're saying that there's two chicken coops and I found it in between, right? Just tell me who has more, who has majority? Not of the coop. Who has a majority? Birds. We both have a shovach. Yes. We both have a shovach. We said if it's karov li, ze sheli. Karov lecha, shilcha. Chetzi, chetzi, yachloku. Says, מה אכפת לי קרוב? תגיד, כמה יונים יש לך? אז זהו, קדיש, גמרנו. So says the Gemara, Hachamaiskin, what are we dealing with? Shneim shavim. They're both אותו דבר. Right? They're both the same. Yeah? They're both the same. So says the Gemara, fine, but go after the majority of the world. Majority of the world, right? They're not the same. Answers the Gemara, what are we dealing with? Bishvir shel kramim. We're talking about on a road of kramim. And therefore, even if it's going to be outside, right, of the 50 amot, he didn't come out of midadeh, because through the kramim, they come and they're able to do it even more. Remember, the kramim, it's like a motzed derech, and therefore he's able to go further down, right? The imita de me'al ma'at, because if he came from the world, he couldn't come from the world. So as long as he comes and he keeps on seeing his nest, he'll continue going. Meaning like this, the bird, by naturally, when it's hopping around, he's going to come, and so therefore, in such a case, in we're talking about shvil shel kramim, he will go even if it's going to be more, right? That's what we're saying over here, right? So there, it does not go from the rova olam, but it can come right after 50 ama. Okay.